When you first start the gym, it should be your goal to become an intermediate lifter. This is where you're strong, have a pretty good body, and you can get to this point in about a year to a year and a half. When I first started, I made a lot of mistakes, so it took me more like 3 years. The title's clickbait. I definitely made some gains, but it was mostly aesthetic. I didn't really get stronger, and that's because I made these two big mistakes. One was that I never did a bulk because I didn't realize how to do it properly or that it was important. The other was missing out important exercises like squats or not tracking strength over time to make sure I was getting stronger at things like bench press. I'm going to tell you my story from beginner to now and what I would have done differently to make progress faster. 0 to 6 months, beginner struggle. The first 6 months is just like anyone that's new to the gym. I didn't really know what exercises to do or what muscles to work. I was just showing up and doing whatever I felt like. I used some different machines, and if I worked out with a friend, they would show me some exercises too. I'd come from boxing, so I was lean with a decent physique, but I was very skinny with very little muscle. I was living at home, so I didn't cook for myself. I didn't really understand diet. I don't think I even really understood what protein was at this point. However, even at this point, I still enjoyed the gym. I knew that I didn't have to be the expert. I just needed to go consistently, and over time, I'd figure it out. Because I was just going for fun, I wasn't putting pressure on myself, and I think this is why I lasted longer than what a lot of people do when they start the gym for a few months and then decide to quit. I started to figure things out and put things together, and I did look a little bit better after that 6 months, but then after that is where it really started to go up. Novice, 6 months to 2 years. At this point, I had a decent understanding of which muscles I had to work and what exercises worked each muscle. I was on a push-pull leg split, but I was only going about 4 times a week, so this wasn't a good split for me. I understood that you want a big chest, so you want to do things like incline dumbbell bench press and pec deck, where you do that sort of movement. I was taking creatine and protein, and also I'd moved out to uni, so I started cooking for myself, meaning I started to understand diet a little bit better and my meals were becoming healthier. I wasn't really tracking strength, but I was trying to go as heavy as possible while still getting around 8 reps. I wasn't tracking strength, but I was trying to go as heavy as I could whilst keeping okay form and keeping about 8 reps. So at this point, I was starting to put on muscle. I just wasn't super strong yet, but like I said, I was lean, and so I actually looked really good around this point. I had a physique at this point, which some people might say was their dream body. However, I was weak. I didn't really do compound movements, especially things like squats. I did some compound lifts like bench press or lat pull down, but I wasn't really doing it with the intention of doing compound lifts to work more muscles. So I was getting a pretty high fatigue to stimulus rate. I was doing a lot of isolation movements as hard as I could, so I'd be sore, but I wasn't doing much overall volume because there wasn't many compound movements and because I was only going about 4 times a week. I was consuming the online fitness content by this point. I was learning more and getting better, so I was making progress. However, I wasn't quite intermediate because I just wasn't strong enough yet. It's the differences that I made in the next year that truly took me from beginner to an intermediate lifter who was actually happy with their progress. 2 to 3 years, becoming intermediate. After 2 years, I knew the importance of the bench, the squat, and the deadlift, which are the powerlifting movements, and I set it as a goal to get stronger at them. I also had never really gained weight from the first time that I started going to the gym. I was still around 60 kilos, and so I set the intention to eat 4 meals a day and get stronger and heavier. I never put much intention to making my meals more calorie dense and eating more regularly, and I thought it was just hard for me to gain weight. I'd say it's mostly a mindset change. If you've been used to eating just 3 meals a day, kind of staying at that maintenance level, you need to kind of force yourself when you're first starting to bulk to eat more, even when you're not that hungry. Over time, your body adapts and you can push it all the way up to 5 meals a day, especially if you're someone that's very active. So I was meal prepping, which is essential because you don't want to be cooking 4 times a day, and I was eating stuff that's packed with protein and was just calorically dense in general. All of this meant that my weight started moving up and I was getting stronger. Like I said, the other thing was focusing on those compound movements. The one that I really wanted to learn was the squat, because I deadlifted and bench pressed a fair bit before, but squat was one that I always stayed away from. I'd do like a hack squat or just another leg variation. Even though I was 2 years into lifting, I couldn't even squat my body weight. 60 kilos felt really heavy. It felt heavy on my back. It felt heavy to go low. That's just because my body wasn't used to the movement, and so I had to learn it step by step. For me, squatting was the hardest thing to learn because it felt like I had to go so deep. It was hard to keep balance, and there was just more of a learning curve that needed to take place. However, I kept on at it. I watched videos, I tweaked my form, I kept adding weight over time, and I was getting stronger and stronger. Basically like I had my noob gains back. The weight moved up really quickly from 60 to 65 and then to 70, all the way up to 100 kilos. So I was really using progressive overload. I was keeping track of what I lifted before and making sure that it increased over time. It's hard to track what weights you lift when it's for an isolation movement. Isolation movements are more bodybuilder style and you're meant to do it with control. Say it's like a bicep curl. It's not about how much you can cheat up because then you're using the rest of your body. It's more about keeping strict form, and so it's not a good thing to track. However, when it's a big compound movement, you can't cheat because the best form is the form that allows you to get the most weight up, so it's easier to track. When you track bench, squat, and deadlift, bench press is your pushing power, squat is your anterior legs, so your quads basically, and deadlift is your hamstrings, which is the back of your legs. You might also want to keep track of lat pull downs for your pulling strength. So because I tracked all these, I made the necessary tweaks in my programming to make sure I was getting stronger. I feel this is when I really maxed out my noob gains, because before I wasn't really gaining weight, so I looked good, but it wasn't real strength gains. This is where I was getting stronger week on week, and eventually it started to plateau after I rinsed this for long enough. Also, I've basically always gone to the gym like 4 times a week, except before I was doing push-pull legs, so I missed a lot of the sessions, and so I didn't get the volume that I needed. Knowing that I only went 3 or 4 times a week, I started doing more full body, or at least upper body, lower body style training. This meant I could focus on the most important bang for your buck exercises, and instead of doing something for my shoulders, my chest, and my triceps, I could just do something like bench press, which would hit all 3. So things that used to take a bit of a bigger priority, say like leg extensions or tricep extensions, took more of a backseat to compound movements like lat pull down, squat, deadlift, dips, just things that hit more different muscles. I gained weight quite quickly, and also wasn't that disciplined. I was drinking quite a bit, and because of that I started to lose the good physique that I had before. So I was stronger than ever, but I didn't look that great, and I wasn't as strong as I could be pound for pound because I simply weighed more. So after going hard on that for about 6 months, I spent the next 6 months cutting, running more, and living more healthily. I did a cut where I kept my protein super high, but I just went back to eating around 3 meals per day. I kept basically the same training style, 3 or 4 times a week, either full body or upper body, lower body. I also, for the first time ever, started training my abs. You're usually able to see abs if you're lean, especially if you do things like squats and deadlifts where you have to brace your core, which does strengthen your abs. However, your abs will look nicer and more noticeable if you train them directly, doing things like sit-ups and hanging leg raises and V-sits. The one that I liked because it was quicker than the rest, you don't need to do as many reps, is hanging leg raises, and I really recommend this for you as well. My form was terrible when I first started, my body wasn't used to it, but over time I got a lot better and my abs became more noticeable than ever. So 6 months of doing this and I was now at the 3-year mark, and I was finally intermediate. I had more muscle mass than before, but I was lean, I was strong pound for pound, and I was strong in compound movements and just everywhere. I had mostly maxed out the noob gains, where if I wanted to get bigger now, it would need to be more specific and a lot more targeted. These days I mostly train MMA, which is about 5 times a week, which is pretty intense, but my body does everything that I want it to, and I'm able to kind of keep it at a maintenance level where I don't lose any muscle. I'm strong, but I'm also very functional, and I look pretty good. I still train about 3 times a week, and I just eat enough to maintain my body weight, so I keep my strength. If I had to give some advice to younger me or a beginner in the gym, then this is what I'd tell them. If you haven't maxed out your noob gains to the point you're big and relatively strong, especially on compound movements, you need to eat more. Eat a minimum of 4 meals a day, so that each week you're seeing your weight go up a little bit on the scale, around half a kilo for me. Try and get as close to 1 gram of protein per pound of your own body weight as you can per day. Do this while giving all your major muscles around 10 sets per week of volume. So for your quads, on Monday you might do 5 sets of squats, and then on Thursday you might do 3 sets of leg extensions and 3 sets of walking lunges. So do that for all your major muscles, which are your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, your lower back, your upper back, and your chest. Your other muscles will also be hit by this, so if you do 3 sets of dips as well as your chest, it will also work your triceps, but you still want to do some other individual work, isolation movements for those muscles. Those other important muscles are abs, lats, traps, biceps, and triceps. So make sure to do at least 3 sets for those directly, so at least 3 sets of bicep curls or leg raises or whatever muscle you're trying to target. That's at an absolute minimum. Obviously, if you can train more, you should train more. I hope you've enjoyed my journey and maybe learned some stuff across the way. If you enjoyed this style of content, check out my mental health guide, the first link in the description. It talks all about getting your physical and your mental in check to achieve the best life possible. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one.